More than 240 schools were affected across the country because of this strike, mostly in Essex. Is Michael Gove doing a good job as an education secretary, or is he failing to meet the required standards? This is Talia reporting for BBC School Report.
This is Mr McKenna, the head of the English department at Alec Hunter Academy.
I think that every teacher gets into teaching to do the very, very best for their students. They want the best outcomes, ensure the best levels, the best grades, etc., etc. When teachers said to go on strike, it's a last resort. It's when every reasonable action has been exhausted as far as they're concerned. So, yes, given what's been in the press and given how the government policies have been changing and affecting teachers, I think as an absolute last resort it was, I don't believe they're necessary.
Do you think it's had a positive or a negative impact on the students?
In the short term, obviously a negative impact, because we had students here that couldn't come in yesterday because there just weren't the staff to teach them. But I think it should be remembered that the reasons for going on strike are to do with the long term, to do with ensuring that you as pupils get the best teachers, the most qualified staff, the best learning environment, the best resources, etc., etc. And without these actions, I think these unions involved don't feel that that's going to be the case. So whilst there's some short-term pain and inconvenience, childcare, etc., etc., it's with an eye on better outcomes in the longer term. So,
do you feel as if they had the right to protest?
I do. I believe as public servants that we pretty much all have the right to protest in this way. Again, it's not a desirable outcome. It's the last thing any teacher ever wants to do is not come into school, because that's what we sign up for, obviously. But I feel that there's something that yeah, in this case, and it is a very, very rare occurrence, but in this case, I believe they're justified.
And finally, do you think that this is the fault of the Education Secretary, Michael Gove?
I think you can't just pin it on one person. I know that Michael Gove is in the press a lot, I know, because he is the face of the Education Department, obviously he is the Education Secretary, but I do feel there are lots of people working with him within the government that are responsible for whatever policies are changing and people are affected by. Similarly, it's not just any one teacher, it's the unions of teachers as a body that are responsible for these things, and obviously the two have met and sat down and tried to resolve these differences, but unable to. So I think it's the will of government as a whole compared to teachers as a whole that hasn't yet found a correct resolution.
Okay, thank you for your time, Mr McKenna.
Thank you.
This is Mr Mullender, a pastoral leader at Alec Hunter Academy. What are your opinions on yesterday's NUT strikes?
I think it's unfortunate when anybody has to strike, because all teachers have got the children at heart, really, the future of the children at heart. But I can understand it, because it's very important that people save for their futures, and they have been saving for their futures, and now their pensions are under threat. They haven't been given any good reason why they're under threat, except for government needs to save money. There must be other ways of saving money than robbing people's pensions, I would have thought.
Do you think this is going to have maybe a positive or a negative impact on the children who weren't at school yesterday?
I don't think that a few strikes are going to have much of a negative impact. It's unfortunate when education is truncated in any way, of course, because, as I said, everybody wants the best for our children, because the children are the future of this country. So it is unfortunate when people feel they have to strike, but it's very understandable when their standards of living are falling. They see other people's, including the government's, rising, and the money seems to be taken from the same people every time.
Who do you think's at fault for these strikes?
I think the government need to listen more. They do say that they're still talking to the NUT, but I don't think they're talking. I think they're talking at the NUT, and I don't think they're listening to the NUT. The government should be listening to the people, because the people are all saying the same thing, that the people that are bearing the brunt of the cuts are middle England people. They're not people with lots of money, and they're not people with very little money. It's middle England every time. And, of course, if you hit middle England, you're going to hit a lot of people. And that's perhaps why the government are doing it. So I would blame Michael Gove for not listening in this instance, and he continues not to listen and continues to berate teachers and the teaching profession, which is unfortunate.
Do you think there's any way in which this conflict could be resolved?
Yes, I do. I think the government should look at cutting the deficit in other ways. There are many other ways. They gave a tax cut to the highest paid people in this country. They say it's because if they didn't give a tax cut to them, they would leave. My advice to them would be leave, and let's find money from somewhere else.
Thank you for your time, Mr. Mullender.
Thank you very much, Talia.